Welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there. Welcome to episode 117 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, for lending me ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I really do appreciate you making me one of them. I'm Jen, the host. If you are a first-time listener, then hey, super welcome to you, or welcome back if you've listened before. I'm a thought leader and digital strategist when it comes to marketing and a coach for small businesses. And basically just an all-round small business lover with one goal in my business, and that is to help you make marketing a priority in your business, because I know if you want to grow your business, you simply need to learn to market what you do better than your competitors, or better than what perhaps you are doing today. It doesn't seem that easy, I know, but it is definitely simple, or it should be simpler for sure. Before we head into this week's episode, which I'm a little bit excited to get into, but I just quickly wanted to tell you about my Women in Business retreat that I'm running on the 21st of May down here in Yarrawonga, which is on the border of New South and Victoria, at Airtree Golfers Resort. It's a weekend for women in business to refocus, to be inspired, relax, connect, and of course, grow their businesses. There's only 12 spots, 4 of which have already been taken. But if you are thinking that spending a weekend with 12 other amazing women in business, learning and having fun is something that you would like to do, then I would love for you to put in an expression of interest. You can go to bit.ly, so bit.ly/WIB retreat, as in WIB is women in business. So WIB retreat, and you can find out all the information there. I'd love to see you come along. Of course, you can message me and I will answer any of your questions via a message. To say that I'm excited for you to meet my guest this week is kind of a bit of an understatement. This young, sparkly, amazing, stereotype disrupting lady has changed me over the past 12 months or so. And I mean really changed me. So how has she changed me? Well, let's start on how I know Lisa Cox. Did I already say her name? Oh, I'm sorry. Our beautiful guest today is Lisa Cox. She's an author, an Instagram influencer, a speaker, and a consultant all around inclusive marketing and media diversity. You see, I've been attending for about 12 months now Friday Zoom lunches put on by Jules Brooke from She's the Boss, and Lisa has been attending too. And this actually started during lockdown, but we've just kept it going, even though we are well and truly out of our big lockdown over winter last year. The lunches are casual networking and just basically a bit of a chat with other people, as well as problem solving for all at our lunches. And look, if you'd like to get involved, then let me know. We'd love to welcome you into our She's the Boss community. But that's basically how I've met Lisa. Lisa lives in Brisbane. And so over the last 12 months, I've heard Lisa talk about inclusive marketing, media diversity, changing and challenging pop cultures, and disrupting stereotypes, among all the things that I've heard Lisa talk about. And there's just not one thing that she said that's changed me, or really not one that I can pinpoint, but I'm a huge advocate, as many of you would know, for you are the product of the 5 people you hang around the most. So without amazing humans like Lisa being in my world, I just feel that I wouldn't have been exposed to some of the conversations that we've had and some of the issues that are going on in the world, and of course the business world as well. For those who perhaps don't fit into certain stereotypical molds. She's really opened my eyes. In fact, there are so many diverse women that come to those lunches. Many have opened my eyes for sure. They've made me look at my business, my marketing, other people's marketing, and not so much just to see the good or the bad, but to see it through a more inclusive and diverse lens. I can't stress to you enough, and I'd probably have to do a whole podcast episode just about me and my feelings to really show you the impact that Lisa has had on me, and really just through conversations as a group, not even conversations just directly at me through our Friday lunches, but just on a whole, listening to her talk, listening to her problem solving and asking for help, and just really opening my eyes to what other parts of marketing there are out there in the big wide world. But that's enough from me and enough about me. I can't wait for you to hear Lisa, hear her story, and definitely hear her passion for what it is that she does. So without further conversation from me, let's welcome Lisa to the podcast. Lisa, I am really excited to have you on the podcast today because we're talking about a conversation that I know you are so passionate about. And I must admit, I'm pretty passionate about learning more about it because I think I can learn a lot from you, and so can my audience. But for those listening that perhaps don't know Lisa Cox as well as I do, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Cox. I'm here in Brisbane. And I wear a few hats these days, but my background is in media marketing and advertising. So after several years in that industry, I acquired multiple visible and invisible disabilities, which I live with these days. And I found a way to, I suppose, mesh together my professional background and my lived experience. So now I work with all sorts of brands and businesses who want to be more inclusive of disability, but perhaps don't really know how because it can be scary. I've been that person, that content creator who wanted to do and say the right thing, but just didn't know how.
Yeah, which is exactly what I wanted to sort of chat with you about on the podcast today. I know you are very passionate about inclusive marketing. Can you explain to us a little bit more about what that looks like to you, or what it could look like to a small business owner?
Sure. Well, I suppose with marketing advertising all in one, there's this stereotype, this monotype, one sort of person, and in the fashion industry especially, it's one size, and they generally in Australia have white skin and all those sorts of aesthetics. But inclusive marketing means including people who don't fit that aesthetic, don't fit that really narrow stereotype, which is most of the population, if we're honest. So including all those sorts of diverse minority groups. So it could be disability, or it could be someone with different sexual preferences, cultural backgrounds, religious beliefs, etc. But my specific focus is on disability inclusion, which is roughly 20% or 1 in 5 Australians.
So 1 in 5 Australians have a disability, and yet we really don't see them represented in the marketing. Is this kind of like what you are trying to educate and disrupt the industry to sort of take some notice of?
That's exactly right. Trying to change the mindset around that, I suppose, having not only living with disability now, but having that experience in media and advertising for so many years. My job was as a copywriter, so I made ads for TVs and magazines when they were still around, and I sit there and flick through talent books and decide what sort of guy or girl we're going to have in the ad, for example, and write the script for them and sit there in production. And it never occurred to me, because I didn't have the lived experience, that there was really very, very little diversity. So after acquiring all of my disabilities, I thought there's something I can do about this, because your listeners would probably understand that visual mediums like marketing and advertising are so powerful when it comes to changing social attitudes and public perception. So my thinking was, well, I'm not in government, I'm not a member of parliament, I can't make these big policy decisions and change the healthcare system, and education needs a revamp, etc. but I can do something to change social attitudes and public perceptions with regard to disability. And my hope would be that over the years it would trickle down to affect those bigger things and more important things like policy and healthcare and education.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that we are making progress in it. How do you feel that we are going as a society? Do you feel we are making progress quick enough, not quick enough? It's taking some more time than it should.
It's definitely taking longer than it should, but we are making improvements. And when I look back at, say, over 10 years ago, when I first started talking to people about the need for greater representation of disability in mainstream pop culture like media and marketing and fashion, people rolled their eyes and thought I was a bit nuts. So these days there's a bit more acceptance of what I'm talking about, a few more nodding heads, and I still hear no more times than I care to imagine though, which is very frustrating. But there are small, tiny wins along the way, brands who jump on board, and opportunities like this to educate small business owners about this sort of thing that I know wouldn't have happened a decade ago.
Yeah, yeah. I feel exactly the same way. I feel that we are wanting to know more about how we can be inclusive, whereas probably, like you say, 10 years ago, it mightn't have been a question we were asking ourselves quite so much. As my audience is small business, so a lot of my audience is solopreneurs, I would probably call them. They work for themselves, or they have, a few employees, but we're probably not, we're talking more in that smaller business sort of end of scale. So what are they doing well in small business? Can you start, with perhaps the positives before we get into perhaps what we can do better?
No worries. Well, I have had a few small companies reach out to me, fashion brands, for example, that have wanted to be inclusive and diverse, and where the big players just aren't doing it. It's been the little guys who have gone, well, screw you all, I'll just show you how it's done. So Styling You the Label is somebody I collaborated with recently, Nikki Parkinson here in Brisbane, and the Australian fashion industry is notorious for having a certain aesthetic, but particularly excluding disability. So Nikki's basically just going, well, screw it, I'm not going to wait for the big brands to step up, I'll do it myself. So she's got one of her models is over 60. There are some large women there, myself as a disabled person, and all sorts of diversity which reflect the community in which her customers are.
So what's her, what am I trying to say here? Has she decided just to do that, or does she have a connection that has pushed her to want to be more inclusive? Or do you feel that it's just something she feels she needed to do?
I think it's something she felt she needed to do, and I hope that, myself and others have been advocating about this issue to all sorts of people for years and years. So it's great when people like Nikki do take notice. And but this is not just Nikki, but your audience as well. Not just to look at it as an ethical or moral nice thing to do for all the poor disabled people and all the little minorities out there, but it's bloody smart business. Yeah. And let's look at it that way for a moment instead, because my background is in business, I suppose. Yeah. I've spent enough time in boardrooms to know that at the end of the day, some people, all they care about is the number at the bottom of a profit and loss statement. And that's fine, that's their job, and no amount of be nice, save the world, save the whales is going to change their minds. So I'm trying to address the issue from a business perspective as well, because it's marketing 101 that people connect with and buy from brands that they can relate to and they can see themselves reflected in some way. Mm-hmm. And if we have a look at so much of the marketing and advertising that's around, whether it is from a big business, a small business, or in between, there's only one aesthetic there, one real type of person, I suppose, and that doesn't reflect the consumer base.
Yeah, absolutely. So what can small business owners do better? What could you give us, like, I don't know, 3, 4 things, 2 things? What could we actually be doing better? I guess I would start with changing our mindset a little bit. I talk a lot about human to human marketing, and you've just summed that up so perfectly to say, people will buy from brands that, they can align themselves with, or they can see themselves or have the same moral values and things like that. So I guess changing mindset is probably one of them. But what are some other things that you can see small business owners that could do better to be more inclusive in their marketing?
Okay, if they do decide it's something they want to do, that's fantastic. But try and be consistent in that approach. So it's not just a case of throwing one Instagram shot in once a year to tick the diversity box. If you are committed to diversity, whether it is disability or something else, make it a really consistent effort. So every several posts throughout the year can include disability in some way. And by that, I mean, it doesn't always have to be a disabled model in the picture. For example, the caption could read something, could say something about it, or the photographer could have a disability. So it can be the on-screen and the off-screen talent. And perhaps you may have none of that in your visuals, the advertising and marketing in your business, but your business in some way employs people with disabilities. So there are lots of ways to be inclusive. It's not just a matter of having someone in a wheelchair in a picture.
Yeah, no, and I love that, just being consistent with it. I know that last year there was quite a few people that I guess were thrown over the hot coals for doing it once or twice, trying to put that good message out there that I'm inclusive, but didn't really have it as part of their whole marketing strategy, just sort of did it once or twice. And like I do remember some very significant cases of that happening last year, which, I don't know, probably doesn't sit very well with your overall business values that you're trying to put out there to the world. So
and it's not just a disability thing. There's I heard this on Gruen, so I'm hopefully not going to misquote it. But during the Black Lives Matter protests, the skin tone of talent on screen became a bit darker for a period. But once those riots and protests had all died down, it returned to the very white skin. So it's almost like people tried to capitalize on the Black Lives Matter for a moment, which is just wrong. So there are case studies out there, not just about disability.
Yeah, and I guess that leads me to a really good point that we've kind of touched on, but I just wanted to dig a little bit deeper. Have you seen things change in the last 6 to 12 months? I personally feel like they have changed for me in my life. Do you find that as a society that in the last 6 to 12 months there has been a bit more of a shift that perhaps will be not a trend, but, a real shift?
Yeah, I really do hope it's not just a marketing and advertising trend, because long after this trend has passed, I'll still be in a wheelchair and I'll still be disabled, and so will millions of other people. So it's not a trend for us. So it shouldn't be for marketing and advertising either. But as to your question, I have seen changes over time, particularly in the last year or two. Great acceptance of diversity as a whole, but I've got my head in this disability space, I suppose. So, and one example of that would be, or a couple of examples, it used to be me reaching out to the brands and businesses saying, "Hey, let me help you be more inclusive and diverse." But now those roles have reversed just a little bit, and they're reaching out to me saying, "Hey, we really love to do something with inclusion and diversity. Can you help us?" So that's been a big win for me, I suppose, and a big win for the bigger cause.
Yeah, I guess for me in my family, my sister-in-law is Down syndrome. So I guess Downs is something that we have very close to our heart. And it's a bit like, I guess when you have someone like that in your family, maybe you see more of that than someone who doesn't. And I've certainly seen, more Downs, not just children, but adults as well, being used in campaigns for Kmart and Target. And there's a gorgeous girl whose name I cannot remember, who's Downs, who is a model and has a really... Pardon?
Madeline Stewart.
Oh, Madeline Stewart, that's it. And like, I love watching her Instagram. And I guess, for me, in my heart, I tend to gravitate towards people like that. And I've certainly seen a little bit more inclusiveness of children with Down syndrome, or even adults with Down syndrome, in people's marketing of recent times. So that's one of the trends I guess I'm following in my life.
Yeah, there has been, which is so fantastic to see. And again, it's not just about pictures of people in wheelchairs. A few years ago, Mattel brought out a Barbie doll in a wheelchair, and Barbie's got all sorts of problems, but we won't go there for now. A doll in a wheelchair. And then a couple of years later, only recently, came up forward and brought out an entire line of inclusive dolls. There's an amputee, someone in a wheelchair, there's a Down syndrome, resembling a Cabbage Patch Kid, I think.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. And that goes to show the power of one brand making some changes, the others are following. And it's so powerful for just little kids to have these different dolls in the toy box. And it helps to normalise disability in such a big way. Obviously, government policy and big things like that can change the world too, but for little people especially, just having that irregular visibility of disability around them is so important.
Yeah, and I think in some ways even more important, like we are showing our gratitude, I guess, for diversity with our wallets, as opposed to a government policy that is telling us to be more inclusive. So in some ways, brands taking it on is even more powerful perhaps than changing a government policy or something like that. For the people on the ground who are trying to be more inclusive, we can spend our dollars being more inclusive as well.
Absolutely. There's so much power in your wallet. There really is.
In so many ways, just not for diversity, but yeah, absolutely for that. So your mission is to disrupt and educate around inclusive marketing, or just us being more inclusive. What's your most powerful thing you can share with us to try and disrupt and educate us?
There's there's a few. I don't know if there's just one, but to rethink what you know about disability, the stereotypes that you have in your head, that it's okay if you have them, because it's just a result of decades worth of programming by mainstream media. And that's why when people say dumb things to me, which they do all the time, I try not to have an angry rant, and because I think that's probably a result of years and years of seeing those stereotypes on TV and assuming that everyone in a wheelchair is to be pitied, or that we're all Paralympians or something like that. But just to really rethink what you know about disability, surround yourself, and whether that's online or offline, surround yourself with other disabled people who can educate you if you can't necessarily go out and educate yourself, because it's easy for an advocate or activist to say, educate yourself. But exactly how and where do you do that? I mean, I'm a passionate advocate, but I still get words wrong all the time. So I really can't blame people without that lived experience for sometimes getting things wrong and being confused as well.
Yeah. And I think, that's a beautiful segue, which was kind of my next question, is where can we go to find out more information about being more inclusive and about diversity, and about changing the stereotypes that perhaps for me, for 46 years I've kind of have been instilled in me?
There are some great people you can follow on social who will just present an everyday life. So they might be driving the kids to school, making school lunches, having barbecues, all those air quotes, normal things that everybody does. But unfortunately, we don't see those representations in mainstream media. So if you're only relying on the project and Channel 10 News and 7 9 for your understandings about disability and what disabled people are capable of, and then do look elsewhere.
Yeah. So do you have any suggestions on the people to follow on Instagram or to I guess Google and see?
Oh, let me get my phone out. I hope we can pause here.
Yeah.
Oh, Naz Campanella. That's right. I was just reading an article of hers this morning. Naz Campanella is a blind journalist, and she's absolutely amazing. Not because she's blind, just because she's a fantastic journalist and writes so eloquently.
Yeah.
And has written similar to myself about these assumptions people make about us and the low bar that is set for people with disabilities. So I'm often congratulated for doing the most mundane, run-of-the-mill things. It's because people have such a low expectation of people with disability. And the late disability advocate Sally Young put it that we're congratulated just for getting out of bed and remembering our own names. Many of your listeners, if they're in Australia, will be familiar with people like Dylan Alcott,
Mm-hmm.
who's an awesome guy, also a fantastic tennis player. I'm just going to jump into my Instagram here.
And certainly Dylan has, had a lot of, well, I say a lot of, I have seen him quite a bit advocating for change and, showing diversity in the best possible way of being, Australia's champion in tennis. I don't know, how many years in a row is that for him? 5 or something like that?
A lot more than me and the rest of it. I'm not entirely sure, but I love his Instagram. It's him and his beautiful girlfriend, everyday life, when he's not off doing incredible things with tennis. My C5 life, my C and the number 5 life. I called Lindsay here in Brisbane. He's quadriplegic. I think the story is he dived into a pool when he was about 19. Awesome guy. And again, just presents very real videos of him barbecuing or doing whatever needs to be done. But I know there are a lot of healthcare professionals, OTs and physiotherapists who follow his work just to see that other side of what disability can look like, because all they're used to is the clinical side of things. Carol Taylor is a designer here in Brisbane and the world's first quadriplegic designer. So she designed a range for Brisbane Fashion Month, Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, a couple of years ago, and I was fortunate enough to wear that on the runway. So she's another amazing woman, acquired her disability, I think it was in her early 20s, has since had a child, become an amazing artist, also just went back to study law as if things weren't up to. And I've just thought, you know what, I'll start my own law practice. So she's an amazing woman, really, really passionate.
Yeah.
Lives with her son, her husband, and the dogs.
Yeah. If you want something done, ask a busy person.
Exactly. She is definitely a busy person.
Oh, wow. I might get you to put those in an Instagram DM for me, because some of the spelling, I guess, might trick some people up, because obviously a podcast is for listening, and I'll put all those in the show notes. And of course, we need to follow you as well. I know you are very big on Instagram, and you're certainly, the person that I follow on Instagram and love seeing all your shots. Can you tell us where to find you on Instagram?
Yeah, sure. Instagram is the same as my website, which is lisacox.co, lisacox.co, and that's me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. And again, I will put that link in our show notes, because I think, like you say, to help us know how to be more inclusive, we need to watch other people and how they are spending their lives and normalize it a little bit more in our own minds and changing that mindset. I hope those words are right. I hope I'm not tripping over my words.
No, that's great. And you know what? If you worship in every your words, that's okay too, because I do it all the time. And the point is you're giving it a crack. And different people might have different thoughts about that, but I'd rather see someone with the right intentions giving it a go and maybe getting a few words wrong along the way, rather than going, shit, I'm too scared, I'll just do nothing.
Yeah.
People might disagree with me on that, but hey, people disagree with me all the time. So
On many topics, I'm sure. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why, I love chatting with you. And like we've met through Jules Brooks. So we've spent a lot of Friday lunches together over COVID and since then. And I think it's you making me feel so comfortable in something that I'm not comfortable talking about, or not comfortable because I know I don't know enough, that has really made me look at the world a little bit differently. So I'm very thankful for our chats that we've had, and listening to you over many Friday lunches over the last year or so. It's been really good, and I'm really glad that you came on the podcast to have a bit of a chat to my audience. I think inclusive marketing obviously is not something that I'm an expert in, but would certainly love to see more small business owners embrace. Have you got any parting words or anything we perhaps haven't touched on that you would like to touch on before we finish up?
on the spot, not that I can think of right now, except to really encourage everyone out there to. I know there is a niche, and you can't be everything for everyone and include every color of the rainbow, etc. But finding ways to be inclusive of disability or even another minority, it's not rocket science. And if people are a bit unsure about something, shoot me a DM. Honestly, I'd be more than happy to help, because you have your little business, your tiny little business, whatever it may be, has the potential to be a catalyst for some real change and help a lot of people.
That's a very inspiring way to finish the podcast. Thank you so much, Lisa, for your time. I really appreciate it. And I'll put all those links in the show notes, and you can go and follow some Instagram accounts and, learn a little bit more about inclusive marketing. Thanks again, Lisa, for coming on. Great to chat.
Thanks, Jan. Great to be here.
I really hope you enjoyed that chat with Lisa. Now, make sure you go and get to know her a little bit more and follow her on Instagram, because that's where she hangs out, is on Instagram. Of course, there is also her website. All the links to the people that she was talking about, as far as Instagram influencers to follow, and also a couple of podcasts to listen to if you love podcasting, which hopefully you do because you're listening to this one. You can find them all in the show notes at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/117, as in 117. Lisa is only on Instagram, which, from a marketing strategy point of view is a really great strategy, picking one platform and going all in on that platform, and not trying to be all things to all people. So just another reason why I love Lisa and her business model even a little bit more. She's all about just having that one strategy to change the world through Instagram. So make sure you go over to lisacox.co on Instagram and follow along as well. Lisa had some really great advice for us on the interview, but what I really took away from the whole interview and from just knowing Lisa for the last 12 months is it's okay not to know. But it's all about trying. It's okay if you bugger up your words or you're not politically correct around your inclusiveness, as long as your intent is there, your intent to be kind or to help or to learn is there. Personally, I find this really so hard. So it's nice to know there are advocates like Lisa out there that aren't judging people like me as we are trying to navigate I don't even know how to explain it, navigate the words and the terms that we need to be using in 2021, which are perhaps a little bit left of field of, our small worlds that we live in. I know myself, I live very much in a little bubble, and that's why I love my Friday lunches with She's the Boss, because I get to talk to so many other amazing people that I would never have the opportunity to do just through living on a farm in rural Australia. So I really love Lisa's attitude to all of this. So as you're finishing listening to this, I would really encourage you to take a break and maybe grab a cuppa and really have a brainstorm on how you can make your life and your business and maybe even your marketing more inclusive, and perhaps be an advocate for media diversity as well. For me, I guess at the very least, what we can do it with our money. We're in business, we earn money, but our money that we are spending does have the opportunity to change so many lives if we change some of our shopping habits to support those in business who really have the same business values as us. Aside from this business here, like my whole Spend With Us, Buy From a Bush business, that's what it's built on. It's built on people wanting to change their shopping habits to support rural and regional small businesses. And we can do the same here about, supporting brands that are more inclusive and brands that are more diverse. So if you feel powerless, that is definitely one way that we can change the world just a little bit at a time. But of course, we all did it in mass, then we are going to advocate for that change for sure. I can't thank you enough for listening. This was a really important episode to me. I've really enjoyed Lisa's company, and I still will continue to enjoy Lisa's company, and I really appreciated her candidness and her honesty on this podcast. But of course, that is all for episode 117. I will be back for 118 next Thursday, and I look forward to chatting then, or perhaps we could have a bit of a chat on social media between now and then. You will, of course, find me on all the platforms, and I would really love for you to join me. One place that we can have a great conversation is through my Like-Minded Business Owners Facebook group. So if you haven't joined that Facebook group, then head over there and join in the conversation. If you're enjoying this podcast, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and maybe share this episode with another superstar business owner who's doing that daily grind, but would really love to hear from someone like Lisa about about marketing inclusiveness and about diversity. Like I said, she's a great advocate for it, and I'm very thankful that she took the time out to come and chat on my podcast. Anyway, I will see you all next week, if not in between. But remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
Say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.